After that fiery presentation by Christina, welcome back. Hope you had a possibility to shake the legs against thrombosis. It's always important to stand up in the middle. Or just go out into the sun, actually, something that we, as the people that stay in this room forever, never see the light of day. We're very happy to basically pick up where Christina left us with Christian, because he's going to not talk about the toolbox. And maybe after what I just said, after Christina, it sort of sounded like, well, because stack, you can sort of translate stack differently, I guess. It's not about the toolbox, basically another talk about AI products that you might use in order to work more efficiently or something. It's really about the way that consulting in 2026 has changed. Right, Christian? Right. He will talk more about this in a second. So if you perhaps have ever tried to work with companies as a freelancer, then Christian is the man for you. Expert Powerhouse is a company that basically connects talents or people that know their stuff with companies that need them. I'm sure you know either Expert Powerhouse or other companies that do similar things. And it's the central question here is really, what has changed? So what can you do in order to keep working in the field that you do? So that either things might be taken off your shoulders. Yes, AI comes into that, but not completely and fully. What to defend, as he has said in his pronouncement of this talk, and what to keep close to your chest. Christian, we're very happy to have you here today, and please join me in welcoming Christian Moldenhauer.
Hi everyone, it's my pleasure to be here at Freelance Unlocked, speaking to you in lovely Berlin. And as Gottlieb said, we're going to talk about a bit the consulting market, and we're going to talk a bit about what to automate, what to own, and what to defend. So it's definitely not a tool talk, but it's a talk about where the value in consulting shifts and what you can do as freelance consultants, as interim managers in your field to come up with propositions. Yeah? Maybe a little word about myself. I'm a mathematician by background. I like numbers. I like calculations. I used to simulate airplanes long time ago, but then thought there is more to it. I went into consulting just to try it out for 2 to 3 years with the Boston Consulting Group at the time. What I had planned to be 2 to 3 years ended up almost 10 years in strategy consulting. I then had an opportunity also to work with a large energy company and as part of their in-house consulting team, resulting in a lot of very interesting projects and eventually even helping with the biggest energy merger with E.ON and Energy in Europe. Now, through all this consulting time, I had a lot of projects, and towards the end of the project, clients came up to me and said, Christian, the work's been great. We love your team. I love working with my teams. But maybe can you ask in your team now if there is someone who maybe wants to switch sides and want to come and join us full time, because we've done a nice strategy, but now we need to implement it and we need to get it done. Yeah. That was not so much possible at the time, because in consulting you try to sell really big teams. Yeah. That's what consultancies do. So it was impossible at the time. So I thought maybe in 2016, there is a market for that, bringing individual freelancers, individual management consultants onto projects. And that's the company Expert Powerhouse that I founded in 2016. And why I'm mentioning it, this is not advertising, but I'm quite proud of it. We're going to turn 10 this year, hence also the 10 years EPH logo. And I want to take you a bit on the consulting journey today. So in 2016, when I left consulting, the consulting stack was quite simple. So if you join a consultancy, you'd get an onboarding training, 2 to 3 weeks, and what you would be taught in is communication skills in oral, but also in written, a lot of PowerPoint training. You'd get trained on how to build Excel models, right? And how to do calculations and DCF calculations, valuations of companies. And then you'd use your smart brain, or at least your smart brains you'd have in your team, and that would help you as a consultant to thrive. And that was the consultant stack 2016. Now, a lot of companies operate like this. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just got a bit more complex. And Christine just, gave a nice tool talk for those of you who've been here. There are many tools out there. There's different heads out there. I'm not going to go through all the logos here, but it just, for me, from a consulting perspective, makes the world quite complex because none of you could know all these tools, advise clients on which tool to use, and even further, like none could really use all of these tools by themselves. And every day, new logos come to this list, and some logos also disappear. So the question becomes a bit, what does it take to thrive as a consultant today? And that is a topic that not only freelancers might struggle with, but it's a problem also that large consulting companies struggle with. So you see OpenAI is signing contracts with all these big houses, BCG, McKinsey. Accenture and BCG actually have been last year the biggest resellers of OpenAI products. So they are trying to build scale. The CEO of McKinsey, Bob Sternfeld, says they have 60,000 employees, of which 25,000 are agents. So they actually say, look, we have 35,000 staff that work with 25,000 agents. So it's becoming part of the workforce. McKinsey even built their own AI model that they use internally. Now, at the same time, you see other companies coming up. Hands up, anyone knows Operant? It's a company in the US. It's a Y Combinator company. They went to market last year saying, we're going to kill McKinsey. And they do it with a different model. They have an AI, and they just have senior people. So they say the AI, we tap onto the client's data. There comes an output, but our experts make sense from it. That's all what you need. No more junior people. Now, I'm not saying they've solved it, but there is a lot of out there, and we could continue endlessly with these press clips, and there is more press clips coming out every week. BCGs build an artificial AI center to service their clients, and it goes on and on. They haven't cracked it. What I found super interesting, I've been at a town hall meeting at a top-tier company a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about what is the future of our projects, what's the future of M&A and due diligence projects in particular. And I will show you a couple of numbers here. They're sanitized, but they give the overall message. So what they looked into is, if I run an M&A project, I evaluate a company, and I write a company report in the end, due diligence report, recommending to buy or not to buy this company, how much time can I actually save when I use AI? And the answer is 37%. Now, I'd probably frame it as a mathematician more like in a span, 30 to 40%. It doesn't matter so much. How did they do it? Well, it was a mini internal consulting project. They said, on an M&A project, we have 180 tasks. They clustered them. They said, okay, this is how much time we need. Right now, this is how much time we need if we use all the agents, all the technology that we currently have available, and this is how much time we can save. You can't save all the time. There are still some tasks, thinking, judgment, coming to a final conclusion that humans need to do. But I think 37% is quite a big number that you save, and that will go upwards, of course. Now, AI not just changes the workload, but of course it changes the way we work with the agents. And there are a couple of topics also that those large companies haven't solved yet. I don't know if anyone remembers that thing that happened to Deloitte. So they were investigated on a report they wrote to a government, and I'm sure there is a lot of more of these examples out there. They worked for the government, wrote a healthcare report, 526 nice pages, and it turned out that some of the citations and the quotes that they actually had in the report were invented. So apparently they had used AI to create the report, and now the question is, of course, well, we paid 1.6 million for that. As a government, is it okay to pay so much money for an AI-generated report? And I would say, well, if AI can generate the output, probably there's a risk that clients will not pay so much for the output anymore. So the value shifts actually from just generating output, from just generating fragments, to having judgments, decisions, and implementation, and creating results actually. What are now the takeaways that you do based on that report? So the big companies, they're fighting their own battles. And what does it mean for us now as freelance consultants? So of course, AI is amazing because you can get faster at stuff. In the M&A example, you say, well, it's great news. I can be 37% faster with my work. So it's super useful internally. What do you think will your clients say if you tell them, hey, I can do this 37% faster now, what would they say? Reduce the price, yeah, maybe something like, great, I should pay you now 37% less, or go home early, I don't know, yeah? Something like this. And it comes in many versions, so speed, if it becomes your value proposition, is actually quite dangerous. Yeah? And if technology gets better, think about it, it's like 40%, it's 50%, it's 60%. Yes, you can do the work faster, but also, in some way, you will cannibalize yourself. Yeah? So the question is, how can you stop this cannibalization? And there is multiple versions of that also. Yeah? Not going to read out of them, or probably I do, but it's like creating research reports in shorter time. Yeah? Automating meeting summaries, so the client could say, look, but why do we need a PMO consultant anymore if that's all automated? Or if I put all my RFP documents and my supplier quotes in there, and then I analyzes it, why do you need a procurement consultant anymore after that system is set up? So how can you get over this cannibalization? And if AI touches all parts of our work, I think the question here is a bit, which parts of freelance consulting work should become faster? Which are the ones that you actually need to own? And which ones are the ones that you really, really need to protect? So in other words, what to automate, own, and what to defend. And I told you I'm a mathematician, so I like frameworks. I like a bit of theory. So I'm not going to make it a theory talk, but we're going to walk through quickly, and I tell you what I mean with each of these three buckets. And then we will go into 3 case studies that I find super useful. And I'm quite amazed by the work that those freelancers have done, to show you also how it can look like in practice. So automate. What should you automate? I think it's quite straightforward. Repetitive tasks. Tasks that have low risk, tasks that are well understood, tasks that are easy to verify so you can see if the output is actually correct, because you want to avoid hallucinations. Tasks that are internally facing. And also, when you do that, think about tasks where speed does not reduce trust. There are a couple of things. If a client sends you a big paper to analyze and you reply in 5 minutes, they're like, have you really thought through all this? Even if it's the correct answer, maybe that reduces trust. So that you want to. So it's meeting notes, it's first phase research, data cleaning, summaries, status reports, comparison tables. I think it's quite straightforward. What should you own? In my perspective, you should own the choices that are really necessary for your projects to have great results in the end. So it's how is the problem actually framed? That is what you own. What problem are we trying to solve? How do you come to a recommendation in the end? What's the logic there? What trade-offs do you take on a project, and how also you run the project? What's the adoption? What are the cadences on the project? And of course, you want to defend as a freelance consultant your client relationship, the trust and the judgment and the accountability. And that for me means that you actually have access to the real problem in the first instance. That's the client relationship. You get access to work on these very important problems that the company might have. That you can bring in your point of view, that you own the methodology. And one point I find super important is also the credibility. So there are these situations as an external freelance management consultant where you're in the room and a decision has been made already and you stand up. So there was this procurement negotiation on triple-digit million topic. They had agreed to a deal, and then the procurement consultant said, look guys, doesn't look right to me. Let's take 2 minutes. Let's get out of the room. And they came back with a solution that actually offered them 5 million more. Why did the client not come through that solution? They were very conflict averse. They didn't want to go into the conflict. And as an external, you don't have this problem. You can just go in and say, look, I'm credible. I can really make an impact here. That's the moment of change. Now, with that in mind, let's probably go through 3 examples. Automate, own, and defend, to have a look how that could look like in the real world. And I've brought one example in the first place that probably many of you had already, who had to create a new product for a client. Quick hand sign. A couple of people here to create a new product. Who's got kids in school or university? I've got 2, I have to admit. So my learning so far is schools, at least in Germany, universities are not very good with data and with data transparency. A lot of different systems out there. So here is Nilesh. He's a freelance consultant based out of New York, working in our network. And he created a new product called Enrollment Insights, which is a dashboard, very comprehensive dashboards where school principals and university deans can take strategic decisions on, and they see on a quarterly basis their enrollments, their funnels, all the financial aid that the university or school has. So it's mostly for private institutions. And when it comes to one school, you could think, probably everyone here in the room now, also with Christine's hats that she talked about and who's in the workshop now, can build a dashboard. Yeah? Not a problem. It gets a lot more complex when you're talking about 10 schools, 100 schools, 1,000 schools, because they have different systems, different interfaces, very different data. Now, actually, they went for 3,000 institutions. And normally, if you do that, and if you'd done that like 2-3 years ago, the typical project setup would have been, okay, there's a project leader, there's 2 senior business analysts, and there's maybe 3 junior analysts. And the senior guys would be more involved in the stakeholder management, in data mapping, in building pipelines, in building the repository. Whereas the junior guys would really go and do the grind work, the hard leg work, gathering all the data from the 3,000 institutions, checking the data, augmenting the data, making sure also the time series every quarter works out, all this stuff. Now, they did actually a different approach. They solved it in a micro team. And I think that is something that we'll see a lot more often now. They said, let's skip the junior guys. We can do it. And we can do it with Copilot, GitHub, and Claude Code. And we basically take away all the bottom layer. And that gives us an extra benefit. We don't have to manage 3 guys, so it's less complex. At the same time, of course, you need some senior guys to instruct the AI, to build consistent data sources. And they built it in a way that they said, look, we don't take all the databases from all the schools and we connect them, but we build one central repository to just be sure that token costs and complexity don't eat us over time. Now, why I'm bringing this example is because I think it's something that creates a big, big opportunity for freelance consultants and you guys here. Because you can do with a very small team or even just by yourself what large teams could do 3 years, 4 years ago. So if you use that automation and you save maybe 30%, 40% of your time, it's not to say, look, I just work 3 days in the week. No, but you can offer now a project that 5 guys could do a couple of years back. So what did they automate? The junior analysts, the research, and the data grind work. What did they own? The product logic, the dashboard logic, the instructions, the data repository design. And they, of course, defended their relation. They had direct access to most of the clients and also to the company that built the dashboard for the universities. So free up your own capacity and then use that extra capacity to offer larger projects. My question to you is, in your domain, it's the first question today, what projects can you do that were impossible before? Think about it. If you get this leverage from AI, what larger project scopes could you offer? Second example. Second example is Tony. And let's switch. It's completely different industry. Tony is a supply chain consultant who's living in the south of Germany, and he is a super specialist in logistics flows. So he thinks about, in a big construction, in a big manufacturing site, how do goods flow through the production sites, how do machines operate well together, and how do we organize those production workflows. Now, Tony had this topic that clients bought his advice, but towards the end of the project, when they implemented new systems, there were tons of questions. So all the operators coming to him and asking him, Tony, how should we do this? How should we do that? Sometimes they called him late in the evening, and he was super fragmented by that, and he couldn't take on new jobs. At the same time, the client was not willing really to pay, a full-time consultant all the time in the aftercare phase of the project. So what can you do about it? And what can you do also when Tony says, I don't want to work night shifts. I don't want to tell these guys, 2 a.m. in the morning, how to, get a machine going again, because there was just some issue in the production. So he said, why not clone myself? Why not clone myself? And he actually did it. And you see that little picture there where you can select the language. That's his avatar. It's a real-time HD avatar. So it's not like you'd probably see it in ChatGPT where you type in and then you get a reply and you chat. It's someone you talk with in real time in any language. That's an interface. What they actually did with this is they set it up in the production environment. So all the machine operators can go to Tony anytime any day and ask him questions. So I'd come, hey, Tony, the machine is not working. And Tony would say, look, can you look at the logo there? What machine is it? What's the error code that you see? And probably, what's the steering that you're using? And he would give them practical advice. Before, the company had about 60 to 70% of maintenance issues that the employees could fix themselves, but they had 30% that they could not fix themselves. Now they're at 95%. Everyone in the production knows Tony, and for the last 5%, he basically comes in as a second and third level support. So initially, I was like, you're crazy. You clone yourself. Who needs you anymore after that? Yeah? But it's not like this. He's actually debottlenecking himself, and he's creating new value streams. So what did he do? He automated repetitive maintenance tasks. He owned the client and his own database. He built a specific repository based on the client machine data, on all the manuals of the machine manufacturing, all the customizations that they had in the production workflows. They did interviews with the machine operators. All the servicing information went into that. So they have this joint client-owned repository of data that then his avatar sits on top and provides an interface for people to communicate in any time. So I think it's a great example to use controlled access to your own knowledge. Yes? Question?
Offering it as a free marketing tool, like, hey, don't forget about me, or does he ask them to buy a subscription?
That is a subscription-based model. Yeah. The client pays for that. Yeah. There is, on all these examples here, and you see it, there is a little barcode here. Yeah? If you scan that, you can reach out to Tony directly. Yeah? He'd be happy to answer you. No problem. Yeah? Sure. And the cool thing is, if you'd go to his website, you'd also see the avatar. You can speak with him. It just get a very different database connected about his own experience in website data. So you can use that, of course, also to have a bit of a project acquisition going on for your own projects. Now, second question for you, in your domain, because you might not be in supply chain, you might be a CFO, you might be in production, might be in any domain, what expertise can you actually use to create new value streams with AI, like Tony did? Cloning yourself, or bringing up, using the technology. Because if you can do this, if you can do automate, own, and defend for your own projects really well, you can free up capacity, you can create new value streams. Yeah? So you can offer larger projects and also give controlled access. And if you can do that, you can add one more thing to that, which I would call communities of practice. And communities of practice is something who's been here before, very similar to what Christine is also doing. I have another example today, which is the AI Finance Club, but it's creating a model where you switch from executing your own projects to teaching clients on how to actually do those projects. So it's almost like a learning facility. This is the example of the AI Finance Club. It's Nicolas Boucher. You can also scan the code, and he's quite famous on LinkedIn with 1.6 million followers. But what they basically said is, look, there is so many things happening out there, so many tools, no one can know them all the time. We help you just to be better AI builders, and we help you to build in your very specific domain, and he's doing it for CFOs. We've seen it before for UX, UI designers. We help you building better AI, and we help CFOs to create dashboards, PowerPoint reports, board presentations, make that repeatable in workflows. Yeah? And we're not selling the tools, but we're selling the learning path. And one thing, for example, I want to show you what they're doing is they take the CFOs into a workshop and they ask them and put them in a situation where they say, look, you're the finance manager, you need to create a dashboard by function, by department, and it should be an HTML output, and I want you to have this analysis ready very quickly. And you have a data set. It's not rocket science. It's not a very complex data set here. Just some very basic information. And that probably everyone could do. You would upload that into, in this case, Copilot, and hit the button and see what comes out. That is, I think, straightforward. I think everyone here in the room could do that. Now, let's see what comes out. In a second, you get the response. And you also get a dashboard. Taking a bit. And what you would see here is a dashboard that initially comes out if you do that completely untrained. And it looks crap. Can't read it, the numbers are ugly, the colors are ugly, it's really not usable. Yeah? It's really not usable. Now, thing is, I, at this point, would have just stopped. Too much time to iterate that in the GPT and write in prompts. I would have stopped. Yeah? Now, what they do is, they have built tons of these models and they teach people. And there is small settings that can make a big difference. So if you just choose a different model and you click try again, you get a completely different output. Yeah? And if you're a CFO, you don't have the time to experiment all this stuff. You just want something that's working with your tools that you have. And that's the beauty of what they're doing in this closed community. And let's have a look then. Yeah? It's just a different model, and you get a quite usable dashboard that you can filter by function and by department. And you get a community of CFOs where you can exchange with each other, and you start that learning path. And if there's a problem, you can discuss it, and you can learn from each other in a closed community. So that's what I mean with communities of practice, and that is just one example. Yeah? If you build a community of practice, what you need is you need to create a learning path. And I'm not saying to sell it, but just as an example of how a learning path could look like. So they're saying we enable your finance team in 30 days, and there's a roadmap. What you do, it's a process. The content will come from the client itself, but there is a process that's proven. And because they have done a lot of projects in the past, they captured this knowledge, and now they sell the learning path. So, third question for you today. In your domain that you're working in, what communities of practice could you build, and where could you offer learning paths to your clients to create a new offering? So those are the three questions I wanted to ask you today. Yeah, I don't want to leave you the room before wrapping up. We saw today that in the consulting space, big consultancies fight their own battle. That actually creates opportunity space for freelance consultants. Creates large opportunities there. You should not sell speed alone, yeah, but it makes you faster. So think a bit like Nilesh, taking capacity out and using that to offer larger projects. Think a bit like Tony, cloning yourself, creating new value streams. And also think about like Niklas, creating communities of practice. And as I've asked you these three questions, some of you might have had a couple of ideas already sparking in their heads. And I don't want I don't want this opportunity to pass on. So I want to invite you for the last 2 minutes here to do a little crowdsourcing ideation exercise around micro teams and potential projects that you could do as freelancer in micro teams. So I've created a little survey here. Yeah? So before you go to coffee, check it out. There is only 4 questions in there. I want to get your opinion on micro teams. I'll share the results with everyone who participates. Yeah? So you get hopefully inspired by all these micro team ideas and project ideas that you just ideated. With that said, I want to thank you a lot for your attention. Warm, heartfelt thank you and cheers to the freelance consultants. Please don't forget to automate, defend, and own your stuff.
So now, probably people will already be online, so we'll either give them a minute, or if there is a question already for Christian, feel free to raise your hand. Or shall we give you, you said it's like takes like 2 minutes, so we'll just let some air into it.
Happy to take any questions.
Then let me, in the meantime, while people are either doing this or just listening to us, let me ask you. We heard this morning already on stage that 2025 seems 100 years ago in various fields. Mm-hmm. Do you feel the same when it comes to the way consultants have to maneuver all this?
So the consultant answer?
Yes,
it depends.
Yes, thank you. Very diplomatic.
I think you see it in a lot of these tool-related topics. Because it's moving very fast. And finance is, of course, one thing where you have numbers, you have processes, you can automate quite well. Yeah? There are other areas in consulting, like change management, for example, where it's very close to, moving humans to do things differently, to get their buy-in also to do things differently. Yeah? So, and that is, working together as humans hasn't changed so much. Of course, there are different tools and there are certain things you can automate, maybe, summaries and all these things. But saying like all these changes don't affect all consulting disciplines in the same way.
Yeah. And follow-up question to this is because your three staples basically are like automate, defend, and own. It's very sort of common sense. You would think for most people. What do you think people find the hardest to do? Because I always think to defend sort of seems very hard because you sort of feel like all these tools give you so much possibilities, so you give away many things that you might want to keep close to your chest.
I think one thing I see a lot, also when speaking with freelance consultants, and I've seen that on LinkedIn, I get tons of emails every day, and there's people, oh, we have this new tool, or we have this new agent, right. And yes, it does amazing things for you, it triples this, or it does your outreach 20-fold, or whatnot. Yeah? Right. I don't want to buy any new tools. I just want to do it myself, and ties a bit what Christina had maybe also in the talk before. I think there is a lot of things that you can do yourself now, but it should not become your proposition. It makes you faster, it frees up capacity to then actually help the client to take better decisions and get closer to the problem and work more with people rather than trying to sell that automation or that tool or that product.
Yeah. Would be nice if you don't get tons of messages that are all the same. Is there a question for Christian at this moment in time? Because if not, then I would probably finish off by asking you if McKinsey is going to be killed, actually, because that was something that was on my mind ever since you said that. And was like, is it really happening? Because I still feel like they're sort of the biggest player in town.
Yeah, it's McKinsey, it's BCG, they're all trying to... Yeah, so diplomatic answer would be from my end. Yeah?
Nobody's listening, just tell me.
I think all the big consultancy houses, they've ridden a wave in the last years of technology adoption, and that will continue. Right. Now the question is, of course, where are still growth opportunities for them? If you look at the big consulting houses, they have partner pyramids, and how do you keep that pyramid intact over time? Right. So it's all about this, do we need juniors? If you don't have juniors, how do we basically bring the project leaders in directly? No one's figured it out yet. What you see is those houses experimenting a lot with flexible work models. Right. So not having so many people on the payroll, but getting their staffing more flexibilized. But I think no one's cracked it yet. So I think they're going to be around, but the models will evolve. Okay. And I would doubt that BCG or McKinsey got killed. Right. Because there are organizations that have a turnover, typically 3 years, 4 years. So they're incredible at renewing their resources and their people, and with that also the operating model. So they can change very fast. So I think they will adopt, and they will be around for.
Okay, because I'm really, really far away from that sort of field, but I always felt like, especially McKinsey was sort of the shining object everybody tried to chase, right? But if a young come-up consultant is thinking of where do I apply, where do I get started, because what you also showed is the junior level is just swept away basically by this process, which is not really good news for people trying to get a foot into the door, right? Yeah. So where do they turn? And is McKinsey still a place to go?
Yeah, I think it's the consulting. I love it. So I can say if someone really has the passion to go into consulting, by all means, go into it. You can learn a lot at these companies. They're market leaders. They do things amazingly well. At the same time, they have all these challenges I talked about. Right. So I think also what you've seen over the last years. So when I started I joined my consulting career in 2006. At the time, you'd go to business schools, and they're like, "What do you want to become?" Yeah, I want to become a consulting. I want to go to BCG, Bain, McKinsey. Yeah. If you ask that question now, you get very, very different answers. There's going to be some people that want to do that. Yeah. There's a lot of other things out there too.
Okay, then hopefully that's good news for freelancers, because that's what we're all about here today. Okay,
I think so.
Definitely, especially when you know what you're selling basically to these companies as a sort of part outside.
So there's options, right? You can even start working with these big consulting houses as they flexibilize more, and they might need specialists here and there. And we see that in our work, like staffing projects. And of course, you have industry companies where as a freelancer also, of course, you can go. That's the classical business and the classical setup.
Yeah. Okay. Christian, thank you so much for your insights today. You'll be hanging around.
I'll be around if there are questions. If you have stories, how you automate it, please come and share. I want to hear about it.
What do you want to defend or what do you want to own? Or just send tons of mails to Christian via LinkedIn because he loves that and he's used to that. Christian, thank you so much for being here and I hope you have a nice afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Christian Moldenhauer. We have a couple of minutes until 3.